Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday morning webinar series. I'm Chloe Tetral, the coaching lead here with ReadyCare. For this morning, we're going to be looking at the topic of why you're tired all the time and more importantly, what to do about it. So we'll just run through a few different bits. We'll have a look at why it's not just about sleep, why the metabolism is really the key player in fatigue and energy production. We'll look at the hidden energy thief and specific nutritional gaps that will be affecting your mitochondria, which, as we remember from school, is the powerhouse of the cell and helps with our energy systems. We'll take a very, very brief look at chronic stress and just finish off with a few practical ways to come back to yourself, come back to a little bit of energy for yourself. So persistent fatigue is absolutely huge. In fact, it's one of the greatest complaints that 60% of adults have is a type of most of the time fatigue, even after a full night's sleep. So while sleep is important, it's far from being the full picture, and it's just an aspect of it. So chronic fatigue, it points to systemic imbalances, that's metabolic, nutritional, and psychological, that undermine energy long before burnout even becomes visible. So we'll have a look today at the overlooked contributors to chronic low energy, from that blood sugar dysregulation that we chat about a bit, and nutritional deficiencies. There's always something I stumble with my words around. And a little bit around the hormonal dysfunction that'll go with it. So a foundational aspect of this will be looking at it through a more kind of low-carb nutritional science lens and behavioral medicine. So many individuals today report feeling that kind of wired but tired feeling, which is essentially a state where you are exhausted, but you can't switch off. And lots of us out there will recognize that there's a feeling of being absolutely exhausted, but not really being able to go, okay, I'm exhausted, let's go to sleep. So it's a two-way effect where your sleep is being interrupted, and of course your waking life is being interrupted along with it. So what is happening in the metabolism? So your metabolism is a lot more than a calorie equation, which is what an awful lot of people will equate metabolism to. It's that kind of calories in, calories out way of looking at the equation, and usually they'll think of it attributed to just weight loss, but your metabolism does an awful lot. It's the master regulator of how our bodies create and distribute energy. So in metabolically healthy individuals, the body can switch between burning glucose and fat for fuel. So in those with high sugar intake in their diets and irregular eating patterns, that flexibility becomes hugely impaired. So instead of a stable output, there's a lot of what would be known as energy volatility. And what I mean by that is when energy feels unpredictable, it's often because metabolic regulation has been compromised. So that regulation of getting the energy is not working in the way that it should. And it's usually through a constant exposure to high glycemic foods. So there's a 2021 study published in Cell Metabolism that demonstrated that participants who maintained consistent glucose levels throughout the day reported much more significant, significant. I'm like word salad this morning. A far greater cognitive performance output, emotional regulation, and subjective vitality. So how they would self-report their energy levels coming in. So in that, we're looking at this, which I think was a little bit cut in when I brought it over, but we'll have a look anyway. The bottom is just cut. So we're going to be looking at the hidden energy thief, right? So the blood sugar instability is a primary but really under-recognized driver of daily fatigue. So when you consume high glycemic foods, that's white bread, sweet drinks, processed snacks, or even things that we might attribute as being quote unquote healthy options, things like porridge, whole grains, what we get is glucose levels spiking which will prompt a huge surge in your insulin. So often this is followed by a really, really sharp decline in blood sugar, which triggers symptoms like lethargy, brain fog, irritability, and carbohydrate craving. So if you find yourself going for things like craving a banana, craving a packet of crisps, which is something that I hear quite often from people, particularly in office situation. If you're getting the ups and downs of that throughout the day and you recognize that little crash followed by a craving, this is the mechanism that's at play here. So what is happening with it on a kind of even further look in? So in a controlled trial, high glycemic meals, so that's anything with rice, potatoes, pasta, breads, cereals, porridge, they increased fatigue by 26%. So we oftentimes get told that these are high energy foods, right? So that's often the kind of labeling that happens in supermarkets. Here's a flapjack, high energy. Now remember that as the brain is running on glucose, essentially anything that breaks down to glucose can be labeled high energy. Theoretically, yes, the brain should be getting the glucose from the snack, which leads to higher levels of energy. But in the kind of day in, day out experiential, that's not really what's happening. What's happening is a lot closer to this graph where you get the spike and bam, you get that sharp decline right back down and that lethargy, brain fog, irritability, and carbohydrate cravings. Now, when there's high carbohydrate cravings, which oftentimes there are when an individual is tired or when they're feeling a little bit groggy, it's because the brain will see that as a high glucose snack, as a way to get sugar levels back up again, as a way to get that spike back into the higher stages of it. Now, individuals with stable postprandial glucose levels, which is another way of saying after your food. So postprandial just basically means after you've eaten. When their glucose levels were a lot more stable, they report greater focus and emotional stability. So carbohydrates act like kindling on a fire, right? They burn fast, bright, and then they leave you, bam, cold. The room's back to being freezing, so you have to use more and more and more. Not hugely energy efficient, right? So healthy fats and proteins are like logs. They provide that steady, enduring energy release. So well-formulated low-carb diets, so that's something that would have lean proteins, lots of whole food, healthy fats, and high fiber dense vegetables. This blunts these glycemic swings ups and down and allows energy to remain consistent and mental clarity to improve. So the application of that basically means that you are not going to get as many crashes in the afternoon. Afternoon crashes are not normal. Granola bar companies would like to tell you that they are normal because, of course, they're turning a profit from normalizing these things. And you can see why the mechanism works very, very well. So 2 p.m., 3 p.m. slump, reach for your cereal bar, which is essentially grains breaking down to glucose, honey breaking down to, it's already glucose, maybe a little bit of fruit, oats, all breaking down to glucose. So there you get a momentarily drive back up that spike chain and you feel better. So you say, gosh, these bars do give me a little bit of energy. But of course, swings and roundabouts, bam, a little bit after that, it comes right back down. So the nutritional gaps and the mitochondrial drain, right? And I won't go too into the ins and outs of the science of this, but just kind of give a high level picture of it. So the human body's energy production hinges on the efficiency of its mitochondria. So they are organelles responsible for generating ATP, which is our cellular fuel. It's our energy. It's where we get our energy from. So it's very, very important to look after the mitochondria. Mitochondrial function depends on a steady supply of micronutrients. So you have your macronutrients, they would be things like your proteins, fats, carbohydrates. They're your main macro, large nutrients. Your micronutrients then would be things that are smaller ones that you would find in specific foods. You have your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants. All of these types of things would be seen as micronutrients, things like zinc, things like iron. So it's very, very dependent on that micronutrients. Magnesium is a huge one and very, very helpful for somebody that finds their energy levels aren't fantastic. So magnesium supports over 300 enzymatic reactions in your body. So that's your enzymes, breaking things down, utilizing it in the body, utilizing food basically as energy. So you need that magnesium, and one of its roles includes ATP synthesis. So it's synthesizing that thing that is giving you energy. An estimated 50% of adults don't consume enough magnesium, particularly women. Women need a little bit more magnesium. A fantastic source of magnesium would be magnesium citrate, citrate. That's an absolutely fantastic one. There's lots of different magnesiums out there. That's a very, very good all-rounder. If you're not 100% sure about it, you can always ask your pharmacist or a very helpful person in a health food and supplement store. They can talk you through the ideal one for you, but citrate is a nice all-rounder. So iron then is essential for oxygen support and transport. So you want to get oxygen all around your body. It's very, very important for the synthesis of energy. So even a very mild iron deficiency has been associated with decreased physical endurance and cognitive performance. So again, you can go through it from a food-rich aspect. And actually, I should say that for magnesium, both magnesium and iron will be found in abundance in dark green leafy veg, right? Anything like spinach, kale, which you see pictured, chards, any lovely dark green vegetables, the tops of vegetables, the leaves. You don't even have to have them as is if you're not mad into the taste. You can blend it up into a smoothie. Happy days, a few berries in there, a little bit of protein, a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of stevia, whatever way you fancy to have them in. Soups is another fantastic way to get them in. So iron, magnesium, and B12, B6, vitamin B12 and vitamin B6. They facilitate red blood cell formation and neurotransmitter function. So essentially, getting new red blood cells, which are utilized all throughout your body, and neurotransmitters functions, which essentially is how your brain transmits signals, right? So if you felt that brain fog, if you felt that kind of cognitive fatigue where gosh, somebody asks you a question and it's like you're in slow motion. That's essentially what you're looking after with the neurotransmitter function. So deficiencies can manifest subtly as low moods, memory lapses, and reduced stamina. Now, B12, B6 is in abundance in meats, in shellfish, meats, that's chicken, fish, I was going to say poultry, chicken, fish, beef, pork, any type of meat, really great source of B12. And oftentimes why vegetarians can be vitamin B12 deficient is the meat and animal sources of it are the best way to get it. Now, if you are a vegan, you can get it from a supplement source. If you're vegetarian, you can get it from algae. So any types of seaweeds usually are quite high in vitamin B12. Really, really great source of it along with iron. So things like spirulina, which you can get as a food type supplements, powdered or juiced or anything like that would be a good source of B12, but any of the algae. So that's anything that you would use in, a lot of Asian cooking would utilize quite a lot of algae. So nori leaves, N-O-R-I, they would have a huge amount of B12. Again, you can use it in things like homemade Asian inspired dishes, or you can get the supplement version of it. Now, with all of those, with the magnesium, iron, vitamin B12, and vitamin B6, women again are at greater risk of being deficient and low in all of those. So if you are a woman, a menstruating woman of that age, particularly need a little bit extra of all of these. Now, even after menstruation period, no pun intended, there's a huge greater need for B12, B6, iron, and magnesium. So green leafy veg, great source of it. Animal products, great source of it if you're somebody that eats animal products. Shellfish, seaweed, or supplement version if you know yourself that there may be a little few gaps in your diet that may not really get bridged. Supplements are a good way to go about it. So chronic stress, of course. we can't go without chatting about it. So acute stress provides a temporary energy boost via adrenaline and cortisol. What do I mean by that? Not all stress is terrible. You need stress to help you make it the last leg of a race. You need it to help you get through the last hour before the child falls asleep. You need it to drive. You know, most of the time that you're driving, you have a little bit of stress. That's what keeps you alert. If you're giving a presentation at work, if you are doing anything that requires a little bit more brain power, focus, energy, a little bit of stress through cortisol and adrenaline release is not a bad thing. But under chronic stress, chronic meaning when it doesn't go away, when it doesn't just swing in, swing out as needed, if it's there continuously without noble cause, it's a kind of underlying sense of gloom and stressful type of something's going to happen in the belly, the lower belly feeling, your system will become dysregulated. We were never built to have continuous stress. So cortisol rhythms, so that's your body's natural timekeeper for wakefulness, they will flatten out. So the result is a kind of strange state of being that tired but unable to rest, wired and tired. So chronic stress elevates your blood sugars and promotes visceral fat accumulations. That is fat around the midsection, that lovely apple shape that people speak about, can oftentimes be traced back to chronic stress levels. Flattened cortisol curves are linked to 60% higher risk of depressive symptoms and double the fatigue. So you have a kind of two-way effect where there's chronic stress. And I'll just take the little slide off there for a second. So on one hand, you are producing all these stress hormones throughout the day, right? Remember, they're there to help you perform a little bit better, outrun, fight, and sometimes that's outrun your boss or fight a co-worker. Not really, but hypothetically or theoretically speaking, I should say. So they're there for a purpose. If you have that all day long, right? Imagine what your system's getting. It's getting a amber alerts all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long. So when it comes to going to sleep, your whole system is going to go, I don't think so. There seems to be an abundance of problems and dangers about. It is absolutely not safe to fall asleep. So what you get then? You get a time period where your brain is wide awake. You're laying there at night. You might be on your phone because you're saying, jeepers, I can't get to sleep. I'll just take my phone out. You might have your light on, ruminating, etc. So what you find there is broken sleep. If you do fall asleep, you're more likely to wake up a few times because, again, you have a gigantic storm of signals inside your body telling you for your own safety, it is not good for you to stay asleep because there are dangers lurking all around. So finding it difficult to fall asleep, finding it difficult to stay asleep, waking up the following day being absolutely on edge, your body's releasing more cortisol because guess what? It's trying to get you through the next day. It's trying to say we need to push through again. So you are releasing more and more and more and more cortisol. You are releasing greater stress hormones throughout your body. Bam, bam, bam. What's happening is your body's also reading that as we need more energy. You're getting a little bit more of those cravings. You're getting cravings for crisps, chocolate, potatoes in any form, toast, bread, beer, anything that breaks down to glucose nice and quickly in the system. So if you can recognize this pattern within you, you may be on the gorgeous wheel of chronic stress and fatigue that's made much, much worse by the types of foods that you're having, even though your whole system is screaming at you for a little bit of sugar. It is keeping you stuck. So switching out to something high protein, high good fats, whole foods, and it doesn't matter if you eat a little bit more than you usually would, because if you've had a higher portion of proteins, good fats, and above ground vegetables, it is not going to interfere with your metabolism any way, shape, or form than a smaller portion of pasta, rice, bananas would, particularly if you're finding that there's a few weight difficulties starting to come up with that visceral fat around the middle from chronic stress and fatigue happening. The bringing right back down of carbohydrate rich foods will actually help that. It will help with the weight. It will help with the sleep. It will help with your energy levels being all over the place to reduce those. You want to have the balanced curve of energy, and having carbohydrate rich foods in the evening are more likely to bring up your blood sugars, crash down your blood sugars, and bring you in that cycle of finding it difficult to fall asleep again. Now, I would say there's a twofold effect there that's best to target if you resonate with this, which is targeting the food, even though it's quite difficult in the first few days because you're fighting all these signals telling you that it absolutely needs a donut right now or it's going to kill somebody. Recognize that that's a huge sign that your energy is all over the place. And actually the thing that will help it is to just say, shh, thank you for sending those signals, but I'm looking after it in a way that's going to look after it longer term. Next is looking after the chronic stress aspect of it. And I have a talk coming up that's going to look at that specifically, but it is not just a nice to have to look after your stress levels. It shouldn't be the last thing on your list, because essentially as your stress levels are accumulating, they're having real effects on your metabolic health, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugars, bringing up your cardiovascular disease risk factors, as well as exhausting you and making you probably have a miserable old time if you're feeling as tired as you are, for yourself and for others. So looking after your stress levels in any small way, think, is there anything that I can do in my week that I know makes me come right back down? Time just for myself, time with, a podcast. Maybe it's about murders, whatever floats your boat. Maybe it's about the world's most gruesome murders, but going for a walk where it's designed to bring down your stress levels, that is not there to think about anybody else's difficulties, but just time for you. Trying to carve out a half an hour a day for that is a really, really good practice. And if it isn't something that you're struggling with now, it's a preventative, whether it's a walk, whether it is a phone call with somebody that you love, but just making sure that you have you looked after prior to trying to look after anybody else, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And if your energy levels are all over the place, you're going to be dysregulated for yourself and others. Now, the other aspect to that is, if that's not for you, are there other little ways that you can punctuate your week that make you feel good? A fantastic, actually, for those of you that are into the Huberman podcast, I think his latest one was on sleep as well, actually. And one of the greatest tellers of resilience, which isn't just stress-based resilience, but longevity throughout your life, right? If you're capable of this one thing, you will be streets ahead of others, and that's being able to shut your brain off at night, right? And this is a skill, right? A skill is not something that you inherently have or do not have. It's a practice. It's something that you can work up to getting a little bit better at. So the skill of being able to stop the rumination, what some people do is they journal, and it's just you, the pen and paper, and you dump out any thoughts that you've had that day that you just need to put down. And you know that they're going to be there waiting for you in the morning. You don't have to think of them in the evening. Know that you're not going to solve anything at this hour of the night, and you likely make things a little bit more difficult for yourself the following day. So putting all of those down on paper, and even writing to yourself at the bottom, I will come back to this in the morning. I know that they're safe, right? You know that you're safe. Your thoughts are safe to put down. That is a huge skill, to be able to allow yourself the permission to switch off in the evening, because that uninterrupted sleep, that ability to cultivate the skill of, no matter how difficult and stressful a day has had, there is a finish line. There's a finish line, and after that, it's just for you. That's a big one out there. So I'll wrap up there because I have a tendency to go on, don't I? So to summarize, how to reclaim your energy: start your day with proteins and fats. For example, eggs with avocado rather than toast and juice. Toast and juice and bananas in porridge with honey are just sugar. Right? Prioritize low glycemic snacks like Greek yogurt, boiled eggs, nuts, berries, dark chocolate. You don't have to have a life void of chocolate. In fact, there's nice levels of magnesium in dark chocolate. Prioritize those low glycemic snacks, meat snacks. This lovely snack at the moment called Cheezos at the moment, hot off the presses, which is basically just dehydrated cheese. Cheezos is the name of it. They are extremely low in carbohydrates and come in lots of different flavors. This was not sponsored by them. I just happen to like them. So time your carbohydrate intake with activity. Post-exercise is usually best for a little bit extra carbohydrate. So if you're somebody that goes to the gym, goes for big long walks, does home workouts, if you want to have a little bit extra carbohydrates, make sure that it's after that time period, because your body will just utilize it a little bit better than it would usually. So prioritize foods rich in magnesium, iron, vitamin B12, and omega-3s. Consider micronutrient screening if fatigue is unexplained or persistent. Incorporate sardines, which is an odd one, dark greens and pumpkin seeds into weekly meals. Sardines they're just absolute powerhouses. If you don't like the taste of them, or if the fact that you are eating their spines is an obstacle, as it is for me, I mush it up with some shallots and a few different herbs and spices and make a pate, which is much, much nicer way of having it rather than just the sardines out of the can. If you love sardines out of the can, more power to you. So dark greens, pumpkin seeds, they're absolutely fantastic source of micronutrients. Your hydration matters hugely. So making sure you're getting at least 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day. And managing your stress as best as possible. So some people use micro breaks, so 90 seconds of diaphragmatic breathing. So that's very deep breathing all the way in, all the way out, with your out breath being longer than your in breath. That stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which essentially helps to relax you. Introduce, if you can, screen curfews and post-work rituals to create boundaries. So having that boundary of, at this time, screens are away. If I want to read a book, I can read a book. The way that your eyes move side to side, left to right, will help with sleep. The way that your eyes move up and down will actually inhibit sleep. So that can be something to start bringing in. That journaling, brain dumping of anything that's bothering you for today goes down on the paper, and you can remind yourself you will come back to it tomorrow. It is safe to put it down for now. So I hope you found that helpful. I always try to pack what I can in these, but granted, sometimes I'm a bit auctioneer mode. But I hope you found it helpful anyway. If you have any questions or any comments, as always, love to hear about them, and we'll get back to them when I can. Have a lovely rest of your day. And I hope you found the explanations around why you're tired a little bit easier to understand. Remember, if your brain is screaming at you for sugar, it's usually the best time to know that you should absolutely not have sugar and maybe have something a little bit higher protein. Right. Have a lovely rest of your day, guys, and we will chat to you next time. Bye now.